Okay, so I haven't made videos recently, and I apologize for that. I've been meaning to try and upload one every day, but it just didn't happen this week. Hopefully my audio quality has improved at least a little bit, because I bought myself a headset, which hopefully will sound a little bit better. It wasn't very expensive, so the quality is definitely not professional, but hopefully it's better. Okay, this set was actually already casted, and I did set up on as one of my goals to analyze sets that aren't already being casted, but I just want to get a few videos in anyways, so we'll have to do. So, drawnonward versus bl00dw0lf. Okay. Let's go. Drawnonward versus spy, bl00dw0lf sniper. This is a ladder match. As per usual, I don't really care who wins or loses. All I care about is how the players play, so I can learn better. Okay, so the ambassador gets to highlight, probably just to highlight the ambassador. Spy actually is playing an interesting game here. I'm curious, because what happened is that he didn't go into the optimal positioning. Because blue enters conversation before bl00dw0lf does. But John would have known with that entry that there was basically no chance of getting this flirt off. Actually, yes, knows that, walks in, plans on it, gets his red flirt, and I guess the red flirt wasn't on purpose. I was thinking maybe that the red flirt was on purpose to try and get the ST out of conversation, or to make the ST. I guess either two possibilities. ST looks a lot more suspicious because ST just entered conversation and left very early. The other possibility is a mistake, and that flirt was an actual attempted flirt and it just failed because every so often you get a red test. But I had thought that maybe drawnonward would do the red flirt, meet up at windows, because that was a pretty bad flirting location for blue. And I guess the decision to enter there isn't surprising because there wasn't really a better place to enter, but is really struggling. Drawn is really struggling at flits, and I haven't really been paying attention to bl00dw0lf's lights, so I might go back over that and try and see why some people get lit versus highlight this a little bit, because in general I care more about how the sniper plays than spy plays, because I think a lot of people talk about spy play. So I want to go back and look at some of the highlights and lowlights, but it's a very nice highlight from bl00dw0lf, and because this is a game of analysis, this is the goal of what I'm looking at is to analyze players' play. I will try to go back and figure them out, but I want to watch the entire game through first. So I think you would expect drawnonward to go back in the conversation right next to bl00dw0lf right now, and that was a very awkward path. Yeah, needs to get this foot done. Needed green, didn't get the green, but bl00dw0lf gets the shot. It's actually a really nice shot. I think the pathing in the conversation and the quick talk and the expected location, if you could have paired up blue with bl00dw0lf, then that would have made blue danger extraordinarily suspicious. I don't know if that would have been possible. So let's rewatch this game and see what happens. I'm actually curious. Okay, so highlights and lowlights here are very interesting most of the game. So the first lowlights come off after the banana bread. So okay. You want to expect timing of banana bread. So, like, now that the conversation is mostly focused on one person, you expect that there's going to be a banana bread. And if you're expecting it and you see that banana bread, well, it tells you something, it's going to give you some information. Here, the white test makes you should at least be suspicious of people who do white tests, especially at times when you expect them to banana bread. I think, which is an interesting play, the decision to low light Snaps here is because Snaps is taking a drink, although could have easily, highlighting it. Interesting. I think there's some deliberation, because the drink could have been very suspicious as like a way to stop talk, but if Snaps was obviously not talking, it could be very risky to do counting on a green. But I think, I'm not sure what the deliberation is, but the highlight on red I think is related to what I said. because she was one of the two talkers during that time for Banana Bread. I think it's interesting that Drawn stop talks to try and hide the talk. I think it's not going to be consistent when people do. For instance, when I mean, it actually might be fairly consistent. When I play, I typically don't stop talk, but then a lot of times I will. So I go through phases where sometimes I stop talk and sometimes I don't. But I think feeling out when your opponent is going to stop talk is actually a pretty useful tool. It's not like 100%, but I typically am suspicious of people who stop talk, especially right after Banana Bread, to try and hide their talking. So the low light and Buck's rival here makes sense because he was out of conversation. And I'm curious about the low light and Red Plaid, maybe just because Red Plaid is really not doing a lot, isn't talking, was looking for this Banana Bread, which is actually pretty hard Banana Bread to get off. It's very risky. It's not hard, it's just risky. You risk the talk as soon as you enter conversation. And so, I actually think this, and then isn't trying to get the float done. So I think this is reasonable. The highlight in blue, I'm actually not sure where it comes from. Maybe Bloodwolf notices that John talked twice. Once for the Banana Bread and once as Buck's rival enters CC. I can't tell if it's his turn. I don't think I can see that in the replay. It actually might be his turn. It's hard to tell. But either way, 2 talks rapidly. I mean, the play to do the second talk is sort of necessary because John is so far behind on seduces. But I'm going to say that makes him pretty suspicious. I think you also, at this point, you want to try to pair people up. I think the top targets for Blue Danger's seduction targets are probably Snaps and Red Plaid, because they're the closest. And but I don't think... basically only Snaps, I think, actually. Because, I mean, not that Red Plaid couldn't be an SD. Oh no, but the Red Plaid definitely could be an SD. I was thinking about, like, positioning was who Blue Danger positioned himself next to. Because when people are walking into CC, spies, they typically want to position themselves near seduction targets. So actually, I think a reasonable pairing would be to pair Blue Danger with Red Plaid, and you'd be concerned about those flips. But you also have to assume that your pairing isn't going to be completely precise, and that you're not going to always get someone's SD, but you can try to get a general sense. In this game, I personally would be wrong, but maybe there's a way to. But I think just being aware that Blue Danger has this potential to flirt. And then this walk back into ZC, I think there are a couple of things. I think the leave from windows actually seem pretty fast. I think that going to windows towards the end is something you expect spies to do who need to finish the flirts. There isn't a bug going on here. So it doesn't leave so fast, but is moving from windows and back at about the time you expect. And then walks back into the CC in a very direct path. And I think direct paths are things that AIs don't usually do. They will do, but not so usually. And then the small slight pathing into the conversation circle with that bump just doesn't look good. And I don't know if that's what Wolf sees or just the early talk and trying to finish. But drawnonward gets shot. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, now Bloodwolf is spy and drawnonward is sniper. Highlight for being next to ambassador early, maybe potential bug. It wasn't a bug, and I think if there had been a bug, drawnonward would have seen it. But I think drawnonward is being pretty aggressive with lighting here, so I'm actually really interested. And unlike last game, I'm not going to watch it through. Yeah, so the highlights there definitely seem to me to be close to going near ambassador in the beginning of the game, potentially just a suspecting a bug, or maybe just trying to fool people who are trying to get into CC. I think it's interesting that the seduction target gets low lit. Maybe it's just the pathing. I think drawnonward has a much better sense of pathing than I do. So that I'm going to say it's a pathing just because that slide into conversation is actually really nice. I'm going to watch it one more time. So leaves turns 180 degrees, which is something that spies will do. I mean, AIs will do on this map. They go 180 degrees from the window, and does this very quick turn around red tie, and turns very sharply into conversation circle, and like nails it perfectly. It's a really nice entry. I don't think it's something that I would have caught. This is sort of why I'm doing this kind of analysis. Is I think that the low light here is for that really, really nice pathing into the conversation circle. That's my bet. Okay, so banana brain goes off again in terms of planes, especially balcony, but other maps it's just as viable because you want to try to expect when a banana brain's going to happen, and when this conversation circle is full, you do expect it, and if it doesn't, it gives you information, and if it does, it gives you information. So you expect it's going to happen. You see bl00dw talking, so you at least have some sense of bl00dw's potential to spy, which she's not skimmed, but talking at the time. So it's either interesting. Where did that highlight come from? So I would have at least expected bl00dw to spy, and that there's still potentially green. But I'm really curious where this. Huh. I'm gonna watch this one more time. Is it because they're taking the drink? Is it just that spies like to take drinks? I don't know. I don't see anything. We'd have to ask John. And a bad timing from the flip because SD leaves. So I wonder who the tops are. I would say bl00dw is probably top. I don't think red tie has done the recent enough floating. Although I guess John liked the pass, so bl00dw is no longer a suspect. Oh yeah, that path through Toby, especially with that bug, was actually really nice. So, not a low light, but a neutral light. John seems to be getting bug, so it's good. I don't think bl00dw will gonna finish just because the aren't floats done. Although he could try to bug, we'll see. I missed bl00dw getting re-highlights. I think re-highlighting. Why does bl00dw get re-highlight? And did I miss a low light? No. I think red flag got low light some other time. Maybe just for leaving that conversation. I mean, the window's fairly soon. Not so soon, but fairly soon. But for taking that drink. Or maybe just not going 180 degrees from the window. I'm not sure. Those are all possibilities. But I don't think that bl00dw is a top suspect, except that he's next to red tie again, and you have to be at least somewhat suspicious of that flit going on. And then, also, when going to windows at the end and then returning, I think is also suspicious, which is why I think that potentially blue danger got lit and bl00dw got lit. So I actually think that there might be something there. But there's no way that bl00dw is finishing flits. Maybe bl00dw risks a bug. I think John will catch it. I don't think there's any positioning here that's really great. There are good positions for bug. And John not rushes a shot, I think takes a shot, but I don't know for what. Maybe moving next to the ambassador. Maybe that entrance you see the conversation circle was a little bit weird. But it actually looks pretty good from my view, but just because I can see it from any angle and look at it however I want. John doesn't have that. John just gets to see that ability, just gets to see it once. And it's actually a pretty quick talk. And he's probably pretty afraid that bl00dw is done, because you hear the BB and you have to assume that the seductions are being done. Let's see how many talks there were. I want to know if like blue could have been done. Okay. Time to talk. Let's do this. My turn. To play. Okay, so one talk. Could have banana bread, but very unlikely just because they're taking drink. Actually, could not have banana breaded. John could have gotten a low light here on light blue. Actually, one talk for seduce with Bondo or yellow jacket. Or white danger. One talk. Weird conversation. I think it's only two talks. Now it's hard to pay attention. I think I don't think John was shooting because John knew that he could have been done with seduces. It seems like he just did a weird path at the end, and John became very suspicious, and then also looked like he was trying to finish up, so then took the shot. Yeah, so I think balconies are hard not to play at both as spy and sniper, just like you expect your opponent to finish. It just typically spies try to finish missions, because it's a very risky strategy not to. But in this game, bl00dw0lf's decision, even though bl00dw0lf is unable to finish, still then pulls out with a win. Okay, so 2 more maps, and then I think I'm done. So Courtyard 2. 2 games of Courtyard 2. Then I'm done. So looking at statues. Okay, so this is something I will talk about for about 20 seconds, because it's not something that I need to say because other people said it, but I think it's worthwhile, because it was really good advice. I think I got this from watching drawnonward's stream. In the beginning of Courtyard 2, and this is going to be true for other maps, but it's easiest to explain with Courtyard 2 just because there's a very specific way to do it, is that the first thing you want to do is memorize statues. But there are 2 ways to memorize statues. You can just memorize statues, go to statues, or you can memorize statues and then prioritize, but in the process of memorizing statues, you prioritize watching your hotels. So, I get the statues, I keep track of Toby, I look at Ambassador, my rotation goes with Ambassador, my eyes keep track of where Toby's going, and I'm able to get statues. And I think before I saw drawnonward's stream, I didn't really think about much. I just looked at statues and then looked at Ambassador. But I think if you do it that way, you very possibly miss any early game bugs. So I think at least I'd point it out, and this is the last time I'm going to point it out. But it's really good advice. Basic lowlights accounting, and so yeah, bl00dw0lf definitely knows what he's doing, and keeping track of the Ambassador, making sure to highlight people at statues, so on and so forth. Who's suspicious? Snaps is suspicious? Nah, I was going to say talking early, but not really in a great flirtation position. There actually aren't a whole lot of great flirtation positions. I think it's something that's hard to watch for in Courtyard 2, but it's more viable than other maps. So let's talk about that very quickly. In the beginning of the map, I'm going to assume that spies want to start out with flirt, just because it's a really good thing to get done first. I don't think it's something that all spies are going to do, but here you see drawnonward doing it. John goes into the conversation with Andres, is going to talk now. And you see the talk. So when you see the talk, that's a very early talk, you pair drawnonward up with Andres, and I didn't even see that even when I was watching through, but I think expecting is correct, is appropriate. So, I mean, obviously early statues is a thing that could happen easily too, but who are the viable people who are flirting here? Snaps is not really in a viable position to flirt. Red Tie is not in a viable position to flirt with anyone, and neither is really Yellow Danger, whatever. That is Yellow Danger. So actually the only person who's in a viable position to flirt in the very beginning of the game is drawnonward. And I don't think this kind of analysis is going to always get you to spy, because it's not. It's never. No kind of behavioral analysis is ever going to work 100% of the time. But that being said, it's at least good to watch out for, is just to at least try and have in mind who's viably flirting. And some of it's going to be hard, and even a miss, and so on and so forth. But the trick is, I think, is balancing the downtime. Is if you know where the Amba is, and you know where Toby is, and you know who Spinnet statue is, because I think hardtails are definitely still extraordinarily important, possibly more important than softails. Well, I'm gonna say that watching hardtails is, it's a very viable strategy, and so much so that you can usually just rely on watching hardtails to win the game. But it is not the only viable strategy, and people should figure out how best they play. But effective strategies that I've seen is to camp the hardtails as much as you can, which I'm actually personally not great at. But in the time in between needing to camp all the hardtails, because there is downtime actually, then you can do some behavioral analysis. And a roll that comes off on purple, I'm actually interested. Oh, I just guess I didn't see the pathing. So watching people move is good. Bloodwolf gets a little late, and I actually really like. Okay, so something I haven't talked about a lot is how this little light happens. It happens as Bloodwolf passes over the character, and that sort of hides the knowledge of that character's low lit. So if Purple just had been the spy, we just wouldn't know that they were low lit, and then would highlight, and then would. Interesting. Okay, let me finish my thought and then I'll go back to that. Know that they're low lit, and then would act as if they're either highlight or would just act normally and wouldn't try to take advantage of low lit. So this briefcase, I think the rotation makes it look a little bit like a bug because of the arm going out, but it doesn't go out enough. I think the highlights probably for fingerprint, because I actually don't think either player are going to fingerprint, because I don't think it's something that people do a whole lot. And I think that even if a player is going to fingerprint, I still think there's going to be a hardtail that gets done. But we'll see if my prediction is right. Currently, drawnonward isn't doing a whole lot, but these conversation circle fairly early. Okay. As I said before, predicting when BBs are going to happen, the early entrance into the BB makes her just suspicious, but it's not something you're always going to have to watch. It's typically how I try to play and watch things. We'll wait for the entry into CC right here. Wait, when did the banana bag go off? There. Actually, that was a really good bullet. It's just like, remember that he was out of conversation. Boxer should get a little bit, I'm pretty sure. But the bullet doesn't, it's not gonna happen. I think, I don't know, it's hard to say that if I were playing this, Vicious would be my top suspect at this point, because I can't say that I would catch everything that I'm catching now, because I have the ability to sit back and rewatch things as I want. Okay, Prolin's going off. Let's see how well Bloodwolf is guarding it. Doesn't see Prolin? I would be surprised. Okay, sees Prolin. Highlights. I think Regis is top suspect. I'm curious whether Red Hive rejected at any point. No, Red Tie actually didn't reject. No, I mean, had a drink and was at Windows, so maybe Bloodwolf didn't see it and doesn't have a drink anymore. But it's unclear to me why Red Tie was highlight, except for maybe there are two possibilities. One, when you pull in and you don't, and it's white, especially when it's white, but even when it's green. Typically, the spy wants to run away and pretend to not have been able to do it. And both briefcase and statutes allow for that. So you do want to somewhat highlight that. I think something that I'm not so surprised about, like, if you're not tracking Proline as well as you should be, I mean, I'm not going to say as well as you should be, that's what. But if you're tracking Proline loosely, like a hard tracking Proline would just know exactly who could have rejected, who could have not rejected, or whatever. If you don't do that, or you're not doing that, or you find yourself in a situation where you thought you were checking it, and then you look over the guest list and something's gone. If you at least have a sense of where Toby's been in the recent times, I think you look at this map, you don't see that just take the drink, you're too focused on something else. You look at Plaid entering that conversation circle, you look over, you see the drink's gone. You say, okay, well, I don't think it could have been Plaid or Yellow Dincher, and this is a risky little way, but at least I think having some sense of where Toby is and could have been in the span of time of that pro line happening. And it's a little bit dangerous because of green pro lines and people being on other sides of the map and so on and so forth. But that's why it's a more loose guard. But it's useful for getting you out of tight situations and also as a supplement to camping. But as predicted, Hardtail did come off, and Fingerprint currently has a gun. And the shot, I'm actually interested by that shot. Oh, top suspect probably for pro line. And maybe Fingerprint, and then walks back and has a little bit of pathing stuff. Does he talk? If he talks, I'll be more suspicious of it. Yeah, and talks. So the talking is very possibly suspicious, because talking is always suspicious because it uses and could have gotten things done. But I'm actually surprised because, well, maybe not. Okay, so let me finish my thought, and I'll go back and talk about it. Is the shot happens as Vergès has poor pathing in the conversation, and it wasn't awful pathing, but it was bad enough that it's actually reasonable to shoot on. Yeah, that bump. So I think bl00dw0lf actually saw it, but I think it's actually possible that he saw it too late. So as Vergès bumps in, makes the decision to shoot and shoots. So that's unfortunate, but I don't know if it would have actually changed its decision. I think it's interesting because it seems to me that bl00dw0lf decided that John would fingerprint because of the suspicion of briefcase and so on and so forth. I made the prediction that he wouldn't, which I was right. I'm not always right with the prediction. I think it's important to suss out how your opponents play, but I think currently people put it on but don't typically do it. Just because it's annoying and it's hard to set up, and it can be somewhat hard to do in a non-obvious manner. It's really hard to get to a statue after an ambassador without being noticed, especially on Koyote, without being noticed, and without having the risk of someone stealing that statue from you. And you can get a drink, and I think if you fingerprint a drink, you're usually safe, because I think it's actually fairly hard to guard that, but that's just personal. I think it's, I don't know. If you're guarding pro line already, you might actually be able to guard it effectively. But it's also hard to accomplish. You have to count on the ambassador getting a drink, and that just... I think briefcase and statues are a lot more feasible on this map and bookcases on other maps. I think fingerprinting drinks is just extraordinarily hard to pull off. So, okay. I don't have a lot more to say. I think the loss for bl00dw0lf here just came from missing that pro line. I thought he was more on top of it. But, and I'm somewhat surprised that this pro line actually worked, because I'm pretty sure it was in view, the sniper, but that happens. You're distracted, you don't see it, you lose focus on a hotel, and that's why behavioral play is actually important. At least, I mean, I think if you're a player like Kazakile, hotels are your bread and butter, it's how you play. But for other players like me, personally, I'm not the best camper of hotels, and that's why I think players like me need some type of behavioral addition on top of just camping hotels. Okay. Last map, and then I'll be done. bl00dw0lf playing. bl00dw0lf is 5 drawnonward sniper. Again, you see how John rotates to keep ambassador in view. He's struggling with low lights here. And then gets swap. It's gonna low light snaps, I assume. Low lights people outside of CC. Low light snaps gonna happen? Yeah. Remember the stats was a statue. Okay, let's go back. Let's go back to this BB. It's green. It was actually pretty good timing. Not a whole lot of people had a conversation. Is it likely that it's fake? No, it's unlikely that it's fake. But I appreciate the decision to not assume that it's real. Although something like that I would do is look, just take a glance at what the investor was and what Toby is and was. So that's a low light, maybe if not for learning, which I think is interesting. I think the low light is for taking a drink and not for learning, or just taking a drink. I think there are a couple of things. I think drawnonward just usually does that, and I think it's generally accurate. I think there are lots of spies who take drinks just because, but I think it's typical for people not to take drinks. But especially then, banana bread purloin is such a typical combo that I think it's actually more likely that right after banana bread, if you're not going to purloin, you're not going to take that drink. But I don't know. I think that was a quick talk. I think that's something that's hard to catch if they're not your top suspect. But who just walks into the conversation to go, actually that path is really wide. Let's look at that path again. That path is really wide. I don't know if John got that. I know that John knows his pathing. I'm not questioning that. I just think it's very easily to be focused on other things. And yeah, that was a pretty quick talk. So again, I think that taking 20 seconds to look at who's talking conversation can be viable, although it does create a massive amount of information overload. So you have to be pretty cautious when doing so that you don't focus on it too much and miss everything else that's going on. I still predict that fingerprint's not going to happen. That's my prediction. But currently, a fingerprint is highlight. Is that a highlight? No. Camping of hotels commencing. I don't know if there's a lot of behavior play. A reject so far proving John's theory. A reject into purloin, proving John's theory that drinks will not be taken. Purloin happens. Nose is green. I'm pretty sure some of the rejects did. Has blue was sure about the green. Has blue just highlight the probable purloiner. I think that bl00dw0lf dead. I think John is doing a good job of pretending that he's not positive, which is an important strategy when you're 99% sure, but one confirmation is just to. But I also think it's important to make sure you're not tunneling and haven't missed something. But I think John is 90% sure and is going to catch on any small thing. I think as soon as purple goes to statues, she'll be shot. I think that there's no chance she won't go to statues. You have to go to statues because there's no real way to fingerprint otherwise. And it's also not going to finish. Statues. Am I right? Death by statues? Yeah. Goes to statues because you have to go to statues. Not have to, but you're probably going to go to statues in this map. It's interesting because you don't want to do your hotel. You don't want to go to statues first because you get highlighted statues usually against most players, and there's a suspicion it makes it harder to do hotels. But then if you do a hotel and it's such an easy place for confirmation of this map. So actually I think there's a lot to explore about the dynamics of when to go to statues, but I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it. Okay, John won this map at this purloin. It was a green purloin, it was nice, and I appreciate bl00dw0lf's decision to stick it out and sit there. That takes both guts, and it's not something that a lot of players do. Most players run, but I think the fast run is also suspicious. I'm a little surprised the contact didn't come off just to try to hide the purloin. That's something I like to do, but such is life. I don't know if it would have worked. The last thing I'm going to say is there are actually a fair number of highlights this game. I think something that I'm trying to work on currently is just limiting the number of highlights that I have, and I think that generally produces a better gaming experience. I think if you have too many highlights, it's too hard to figure out what everyone's doing. So you need to have a couple of highlights who you're most focused on, and then you can take them off and add other people and subtract, whatever. But I think having fewer highlights is generally stronger, but it seems like John was still on top of this game. Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot to talk about. Behaviorally, John was on point and expecting in terms of low lights. And my predictions of people not fingerprinting were correct. And I'm interested to see that trend going forward. But I think that we're still in the phase of people not fingerprinting. And I think it's a pretty hard mission. So I'm excited for the point in time when people actually decide that to start doing it. But we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm done for now. I'm gonna upload this